A Christmas miracle at St. Mary's. Snow fell gently outside the stained glass windows of St. Mary's Church, each flake catching the warm light that filtered through the colored panes. Inside, the old wooden pews held the quiet whispers of families gathering for the Christmas Eve service. The air smelled of pine from the decorated tree near the altar, mixed with the faint scent of vanilla candles that flickered throughout the sanctuary. Daniel Morrison sat alone in the back pew, his charcoal wool coat still dusted with snowflakes. From his walk through the city streets, at 34, he had built a successful technology company from nothing. But tonight, surrounded by families and their joyful chatter, he felt the familiar ache of loneliness that success could never quite fill. He adjusted his blue scarf and watched as children ran between the pews, their parents gently calling them back with loving smiles. He had come to this church every Christmas Eve for the past 5 years. Not out of strong religious conviction, but because it reminded him of the Christmas services his grandmother used to take him to when he was young. Those were the only warm holiday memories he had from his childhood. Before she passed away and left him with parents who were too busy with their own troubles to notice a quiet boy who dreamed of having a real family. As the choir began their warm-up, Daniel noticed a small commotion near the front of the church. A little girl, perhaps 4 years old, with golden curls that bounced as she moved, had wandered away from the children's area. She wore a deep red velvet dress that reminded him of Christmas ornaments, and black Mary Jane shoes that clicked softly on the wooden floor as she explored. The child seemed fascinated by the falling snow visible through the windows, pressing her small hands against the glass and watching the flakes dance in the evening light. Her wonder was pure and infectious, and Daniel found himself smiling for the first time in weeks as he watched her discovery of this simple magic. But as he observed her more closely, he noticed something that made his heart clench. While other children eventually returned to their parents' sides, this little girl remained alone. She would glance around occasionally, as if looking for someone, but no one came to collect her. No concerned parent appeared to guide her back to safety. Unable to ignore his growing concern, Daniel rose from his seat and walked slowly toward the front of the church. The little girl had moved to one of the middle pews, where she now sat swinging her legs, which didn't quite reach the floor. Her fingers traced the worn wood of the pew in front of her, and she hummed a soft tune that barely rose above the whisper of conversations around them. "Hello there," Daniel said gently, settling onto the pew beside her, careful to leave plenty of space so as not to frighten her. "That's a beautiful dress you're wearing." She looked up at him with eyes the color of summer sky, bright and trusting in the way that only young children possess. "Thank you," she said with the careful politeness that suggested someone had taught her good manners. "My mama got it for me before she went to heaven with the angels." The simple, matter-of-fact way she delivered this information hit Daniel like a physical blow. He had to take a breath before responding, his business-trained composure wavering in the face of such innocent honesty. "That was very thoughtful of her," he managed, his voice softer than usual. "Are you here with someone tonight? Maybe your daddy or grandparents?" The little girl's expression grew more serious, though she didn't seem sad exactly, more like someone who had learned to accept difficult truths too early. "I don't have a papa," she said simply. "Mama said some little girls don't get papas, but that's okay because we have each other. But now I don't have mama either." She swung her legs a bit more vigorously, as if the motion helped her think. "Mrs. Rodriguez from the foster home brought me here because she said Christmas is about families, and maybe I should see what that looks like. But she had to go help with the food in the kitchen, so I'm just watching." Daniel felt something shift inside his chest, a sensation he hadn't experienced since he was young himself, and desperately wished for someone to notice him, to choose him, to want him around. Here was a child who understood loneliness in the same way he did, yet she faced it with a courage that humbled him. "Well," he said carefully, "would you like some company while you watch? I don't have much family either, so maybe we could keep each other company tonight." Her face lit up with such genuine joy that Daniel felt his throat tighten. "Really? You'd want to sit with me? I'd be honored," he said, and meant it completely. They sat together as the service began, and Daniel found himself seeing everything through her eyes. When the choir sang Silent Night, she whispered the words along, her small voice sweet and clear. When the pastor spoke about love and family, she listened with the intense concentration that children give to important things. During a quiet moment in the service, she suddenly turned to him with an expression so serious it seemed to belong on someone much older. "Mister," she whispered, "can I ask you something important?" "Of course," Daniel replied, leaning down so she could whisper in his ear. "I know you're probably too busy and important for little girls," she began, her words careful and considered. "But I was wondering, I don't have a papa, and you seem really nice, and you smell like the good soap, and you have kind eyes like Mama had." She paused, gathering courage for whatever she wanted to say next. "Could you maybe? Would it be okay if? Could you be my daddy forever?" The question hung in the air between them, simple and profound, and absolutely heartbreaking. In its honesty, Daniel felt the world shift around him, as if everything he thought he understood about his life had suddenly rearranged itself into a completely different picture. He looked down at this brave little girl, who had just asked him the one question he had never dared hope anyone would ask. All his life, he had wondered what it would be like to be chosen, to be wanted, to be needed by someone who mattered. And here was this child, offering him the very thing he had always been searching for, while asking for the same thing in return. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion he didn't bother to hide. "Emma Rose," she said proudly. "Emma Rose Patterson. Mama said I was named after brave women who helped make the world better." "Emma Rose," Daniel repeated, tasting the name and finding it perfect. "That's a beautiful name for a very special little girl." He took a deep breath, knowing that the next words he spoke would change everything, forever. "You know what, Emma Rose? I think that sounds like the most wonderful idea in the world. I've been waiting my whole life for someone just like you to come along." Emma Rose's smile was like sunrise, bright and warm and full of promise. Without hesitation, she scooted closer to him and slipped her small hand into his much larger one. "Really?" she breathed. "You really want to be my forever daddy?" "More than anything," Daniel said, and realized he had never spoken truer words in his life. As the service continued around them, Daniel began to understand what people meant when they talked about Christmas miracles. It wasn't about magic or impossible things happening. It was about two hearts finding each other exactly when they needed to most. When the final hymn ended and people began to file out into the snowy night, Emma Rose looked up at her new father with complete trust and happiness. "Daddy," she said, trying out the word and finding it fit perfectly, "can we come back here next Christmas together?" Daniel squeezed her hand gently, his heart so full he thought it might burst with joy and gratitude and love for this extraordinary little girl who had just made all his dreams come true. "Emma Rose," he said, "we can come back here every Christmas, for the rest of our lives, together." Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in fresh, clean, white, covering everything in the promise of new beginnings and the magic that happens when lonely hearts find their way home.